The gunshot echoed across the plains of Wyoming Territory, 1878, sharp as the morning sun slicing through the mist. Scarlett Hawthorne flinched, but her hands remained steady as she finished stitching the wound on the stranger's arm. Another shot rang out, closer this time. "He's getting bolder," Scarlett muttered, tying off the thread. "The sheriff's brother thinks he can intimidate me into selling." The wounded man, a cattle driver who'd taken a nasty fall, watched her with undisguised curiosity. "You own this place? All by yourself?" "6 years now." Scarlett cut the thread with her teeth, ignoring the way the man winced at her unladylike behavior. "My pa left it to me when he passed." "No husband to help?" The man's eyes darted around the modest cabin that doubled as her home and medical practice. Scarlett laughed, a sound without humor. "In case you haven't noticed, I'm not exactly what men around here consider wife material." The burn scars that covered the left side of her face and neck pulled tight as she spoke. She'd stopped trying to hide them years ago. The high-necked dresses and swept hairstyles only drew more attention, more whispers. "This town needs a doctor more than I need their approval," she said, packing away her medical supplies. "That'll be $2. As the man paid and left, Scarlett moved to the window, watching as another figure appeared on the horizon. Tall, broad-shouldered, riding a chestnut mare that moved like water over the plains. Not one of Sheriff Rayburn's men, then. They all rode like they had something to prove. The stranger dismounted with the easy grace of someone who'd spent more time on horseback than on foot. Dust coated his denim pants and the worn leather of his boots. His face remained shadowed beneath the wide brim of his hat until he removed it at her door. "Madam," he said, voice deep and steady as he knocked. "Name's Daniel Foster. Heard you might be the one to see about work." When Scarlett opened the door, she kept her scarred side forward out of habit. Better to get the inevitable reaction over with. But Daniel Foster's blue eyes never wavered from hers. No disgust, no pity, just a directness that made her uncomfortable in ways the usual stares never did. "I don't have work," she said shortly. "Try the saloon in town." "Already did. Man named Turner said you've been looking for someone to repair your barn since spring." "Turner has a big mouth," Scarlett replied, but she couldn't deny the truth of it. The barn was in disrepair, and with Rayburn's men becoming more aggressive, she needed that security for her horses and supplies. "I can pay $1 a day plus meals," she said finally. "Supplies come out of my pocket. You sleep in the barn." Daniel nodded once. "Fair enough." "And I should warn you," Scarlett added. "Working for me won't make you popular in Timber Creek." Something flickered in his eyes. Amusement, maybe. "Never been much concerned with popularity, madam." "Don't call me madam. It's Scarlett." "Scarlett," he repeated, and something in the way he said her name made her want to shut the door in his face and bolt it. Instead, she stepped aside. "I'll show you what needs doing." As they walked toward the barn, another shot rang out, this one splintering wood from the fence post beside them. Daniel's hand moved to his hip where a revolver sat, but Scarlett grabbed his arm. "Don't," she warned. "That's just Vernon Rayburn's way of saying hello." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Shooting at a woman is no way to say anything." "Welcome to Timber Creek," Scarlett replied dryly, "where the law depends entirely on whose brother you are." The gunshots had become a near-daily occurrence since Sheriff Rayburn's brother had decided Scarlett's 10 acres would complete his land holdings. 6 years she'd held onto this place, treating everything from gunshot wounds to childbirth, accepting payment in eggs and milk when folks had no money. Now Vernon Rayburn thought he could scare her off with a few bullets. "They've been trying to run me out since I inherited this place," she explained as they entered the barn. "It got worse after the fire." She didn't need to elaborate. The scars spoke for themselves. "Fire wasn't an accident, I take it," Daniel said quietly. "Never could prove otherwise." Scarlett pointed to the collapsed section of roofing. "That's the worst of it. Winter snows were heavy this year. Daniel surveyed the damage with a practiced eye. I can fix this. Might take a couple weeks. You planning to stay that long? His expression revealed nothing. Got nowhere particular to be. There was a story there, Scarlett thought. Men didn't just wander through Timber Creek, it was too far from anywhere important. But whatever had brought Daniel Foster to her door wasn't her concern, so long as he did the work and didn't cause trouble. Start tomorrow at dawn, she instructed. I'll be heading into town for supplies. You're welcome to join if you need anything. Daniel nodded. Much obliged. That evening, Scarlett watched from her window as Daniel settled into the small room attached to the barn. He'd brought few possessions, just a bedroll, a battered tin cup, and what looked like a book. Not the usual drifter, then. Those men carried whiskey, not literature. The next morning dawned clear and cool. Scarlett hitched her wagon while Daniel saddled his mare. I don't need an escort, she said when he rode up alongside her. Never said you did. His voice held no argument, just simple fact. But 4 hands are better than 2 for loading supplies. The ride to town was mostly silent. Scarlett found herself stealing glances at her new hired hand. His profile was sharp against the morning light, straight nose, strong jaw shadowed with stubble. Not handsome in the way that turned women's heads, but compelling in a quiet way that made it hard to look elsewhere. Timber Creek appeared on the horizon, a collection of wooden buildings straddling the main road. As they approached, Scarlett felt the familiar weight of eyes upon her. Doc Scarlett! A young boy waved enthusiastically from the steps of the general store. Billy Thompson, whose arm she'd set after he fell from a tree last autumn. Morning, Billy, she called back, offering a rare smile. The warmth vanished as Sheriff Rayburn emerged from his office, watching their approach with narrowed eyes. Beside him stood his brother Vernon, a stocky man whose wealth came from cattle and whose power came from fear. Picked up a new stray, Scarlett? Vernon called as they passed. Careful with that one. Some dogs bite the hand that feeds them. Daniel's shoulders stiffened, but he kept his eyes forward. You would know all about biting, Vernon, Scarlett replied coolly. Seeing as you've been trying to take a chunk out of my land for years. Vernon's face darkened. That land was meant for expansion, not for some half-faced woman playing doctor. Yet here I am, Scarlett replied, still playing. She urged her horses forward before Vernon could respond. Daniel followed, his expression unreadable. You've made some friends, he commented dryly when they were out of earshot. Vernon Rayburn wants my land because it has the best water access for miles, Scarlett explained, pulling the wagon to a stop outside Turner's general store. And he can't stand that a woman, especially one who looks like me, won't be bullied into selling. What happened? Daniel asked quietly. With the fire. Scarlett's hands tightened on the reins. I was treating a man for a gunshot wound, one of Vernon's ranch hands who'd gotten on his bad side. The fire started at the back of the cabin while I was working. I got my patient out, but... She gestured to her face. Went back in for my medical supplies. Stupid. Really? Brave, Daniel corrected. Not stupid? Scarlett looked at him sharply, searching for mockery, but found none. Most would disagree. Most aren't worth listening to, he replied simply. Inside Turner's store, Scarlett gathered the supplies she needed while trying to ignore the whispers that followed her. Daniel kept close, his presence a buffer between her and the curious stares of Timber Creek's residents. Heard Vernon's been causing trouble again, Turner said as he tallied her purchases. A portly man with kind eyes, he was one of the few in town who'd never treated Scarlett differently after the fire. Nothing I can't handle, she assured him. Turner leaned across the counter. Word is, he's got something planned. Something big. You be careful, Scarlett. I always am. As they loaded the supplies, Scarlett noticed a group of Vernon's men gathered outside the saloon, watching them. Daniel noticed too, positioning himself between Scarlett and their gaze. They won't try anything in broad daylight, she said, though she wasn't entirely convinced. Men like that, Daniel replied, they don't much care about daylight or darkness. Only power. The ride back was tense. Scarlett kept expecting to hear gunshots. But the plains remained quiet except for the creak of wagon wheels and the rhythm of hooves. How long have you been doctoring? Daniel asked, breaking the silence. My whole life, practically. My father was a physician, taught me everything he knew. Scarlett's voice softened with memory. He believed women made better doctors. Said we notice things men miss. Was he right? About that? Yes. Scarlett smiled faintly. About most things. Back at the cabin, Daniel immediately set to work on the barn while Scarlett attended to a patient Mrs. Gardner from the neighboring farm, whose chronic cough had worsened with the spring pollen. By evening, Daniel had cleared the damaged sections of roof and begun framing the repairs. Scarlett brought him a plate of stew and cornbread as the sun set. You work fast, she observed, watching as he wiped sweat from his brow. Job needs doing. He accepted the plate with a nod of thanks. How's your patient? She'll be fine. Just needed a stronger tincture for her cough. Scarlett hesitated, then asked, Where did you learn carpentry? Daniel ate a few bites before answering. My father was a builder back in Missouri. I worked alongside him until the war. The war? It had been 13 years since the Civil War ended, which would make Daniel older than she'd first thought. Joined up at 16, he explained, reading her expression. Too young, looking back. Which side? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Union. His eyes met hers steadily. Not that it matters much out here. It might to some. To you? Scarlett shook her head. I've patched up too many men from both sides to care much about which uniform they wore. They fell into silence as Daniel finished his meal. The setting sun cast long shadows across the yard, painting everything in shades of gold and amber. For a moment, Scarlett allowed herself to appreciate the simple peace of the scene, something all too rare in her life. Thank you, Daniel said, handing back the empty plate. It's been a while since I had home cooking. Don't get used to it, Scarlett replied, though without her usual sharpness. I'm a better doctor than cook. As darkness fell, Scarlett retreated to her cabin while Daniel returned to the barn. Through her window, she could see the faint glow of light he was reading by lantern, just as she'd suspected. The sight brought an unexpected warmth to her chest, which she quickly dismissed as foolishness. Men didn't stay in Timber Creek. Not the decent ones, anyway. Whatever had brought Daniel Foster to her door would eventually lead him away again. Getting attached would be a mistake. Still, as she prepared for bed, Scarlett found herself wondering what book had captured his attention so completely. The following days established a rhythm. Daniel worked on the barn from dawn until dusk, stopping only when Scarlett called him for meals or when patients required his assistance with moving or holding steady. He proved to be a skilled carpenter, his hands as precise with wood and nails as Scarlett's were with needle and thread. A week passed, then another. The barn took shape under Daniel's careful attention, stronger than before. Scarlett found herself watching him work when she thought he wouldn't notice the deliberate movement of his hands, the concentration in his eyes. You never said what you're reading, she remarked one evening as they sat on the porch, the spring air cool around them. Daniel looked surprised by the question. Whitman, Leaves of Grass. Poetry? Scarlett couldn't keep the astonishment from her voice. A gift from a friend, he explained. Died at Antietam. Asked me to finish it for him. That was 16 years ago. Daniel's smile held no humor. I'm a slow reader. Before Scarlett could respond, the sound of approaching horses broke the quiet. Daniel stood, hand moving instinctively to his revolver. Stay here, he said, but Scarlett was already moving to his side, medical bag in hand. 5 riders approached, silhouettes against the darkening sky. As they drew closer, Scarlett recognized Vernon Rayburn at the lead. "Evening, Scarlett," Vernon called, his voice carrying across the yard. "Thought I'd come by and make you another offer on this land." "Not interested," Scarlett replied firmly. "Same as last time." Vernon dismounted, his boots hitting the dirt with a thud. "Thing is, circumstances have changed. Railroads coming through. This property's value just doubled." "Then I'd be a fool to sell." Vernon's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Or a fool not to. $10,000. That's 5 times what this place is worth." "This place isn't for sale at any price," Scarlett said. "And if the railroad's really coming, you can take that up with the proper authorities." "I am the proper authority in these parts," Vernon replied, his friendly facade slipping. "My brother's the law, and I'm the reason this town even exists." Daniel stepped forward, placing himself slightly ahead of Scarlett. The ladies made her position clear. Vernon's eyes narrowed. "And who might you be?" "Just a hired hand," Daniel replied evenly. "Well, hired hand, this isn't your concern." Vernon's hand rested on his gun. "In fact, I'm thinking Timber Creek might not be the place for you. Plenty of other towns looking for drifters." "I'm not finished with my work here," Daniel said, his voice level despite the tension crackling in the air. Vernon studied him for a long moment, then laughed a harsh sound in the quiet evening. "I see how it is. You think you're going to be the one to tame the wild doc. Good luck with that. Men have tried. Even the desperate ones don't stick around once they see what's under those high collars." Scarlett felt the familiar burn of shame and anger, but she kept her face impassive. She'd learned long ago that showing pain only gave men like Vernon satisfaction. "Leave my property," she said coldly, "and don't come back unless you're bleeding." Vernon spat on the ground. "This ain't over, Scarlett. That railroad's coming, and your little patch of land is standing in the way of progress." He turned to his men. "Let's go. We got other ways to make our point." As they rode away, Scarlett released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Daniel remained tense beside her, watching until the riders disappeared into the darkness. "He'll be back," Daniel said quietly. "I know." Scarlett's hand trembled slightly as she set down her medical bag. "He always comes back." That night, Scarlett couldn't sleep. Vernon's words echoed in her mind, not the threats about the land, but the casual cruelty about her scars. It shouldn't still hurt after all these years. But it did. Perhaps because there was truth in it. No man had wanted her before the fire, with her outspoken ways and her refusal to be anything but what she was. After the fire, they couldn't even look at her. Not that she needed a man. Her life was full enough with her practice, her land. But sometimes, in the quiet darkness, Scarlett admitted to herself that the loneliness cut deeper than any physical wound she'd treated. A noise outside startled her from her thoughts. Grabbing her father's old shotgun, Scarlett moved to the window. In the moonlight, she could make out Daniel's figure, walking the perimeter of her property, rifle in hand. He was standing guard. Something unfamiliar and warm unfurled in Scarlett's chest. She watched him circle back toward the barn, his movements purposeful but unhurried. When he glanced toward her window, Scarlett stepped back quickly, not wanting to be caught staring, but the image stayed with her as she returned to bed Daniel Foster, keeping watch while she slept. Morning brought unexpected visitors. Scarlett was checking her herb garden when she heard the approach of a wagon. A young woman sat at the reins, her face pale with fear. Beside her, a man held a blood-soaked cloth to his leg. "Doc Scarlett," the woman called. "Please help. It's Jacob, he's been shot." Scarlett ran to the wagon, Daniel close behind. Together they helped carry Jacob into the cabin and onto the examination table. "What happened?" Scarlett asked, cutting away the man's pants to reveal an ugly wound. "We were heading to town. The woman Emma," Scarlett recalled, explained tearfully. "Vernon Rayburn's men stopped us on the road. Said we were trespassing on his land. But that's not true. It's the same route we always take to Timber Creek. Daniel's expression darkened. Rayburn's marking his territory. Claiming the road to force folks onto his land, Scarlett agreed grimly, where he can charge them for passage. The bullet had gone clean through Jacob's thigh, missing the bone but causing significant blood loss. While Scarlett worked to clean and stitch the wound, Daniel helped keep Jacob calm, speaking in low, reassuring tones. "You'll need to stay off this leg for at least a week," Scarlett instructed when she finished. "The bullet missed anything vital, but infection is still a risk." "We can't stay here," Jacob protested weakly. "Our farm." "I'll ride out and check on your place," Daniel offered. "Make sure the animals are tended to." Emma looked at him with grateful eyes. "Thank you. We're just north of Timber Creek, past the old mill." After they settled Jacob in the spare room, Scarlett pulled Daniel aside. "Be careful. If Vernon's men are watching the roads, they'll be watching the farms too." "I can handle myself," Daniel assured her. "That's what worries me." Scarlett's voice was softer than she intended. "Vernon isn't just some bully. He's dangerous." Daniel's expression gentled. "I know the type. Seen plenty like him during and after the war. Men who think power gives them the right to take whatever they want. Just come back in one piece. I've got enough patience as it is." A smile touched the corner of Daniel's mouth. "Yes, madam." "Don't call me madam," Scarlett reminded him, but there was no heat in her words. While Daniel was gone, Scarlett tended to Jacob and tried to calm Emma's fears. The young couple had only been in Timber Creek for 6 months, drawn by the promise of affordable land. They hadn't yet encountered Vernon Rayburn's particular brand of territorial enforcement. "Is it true what they're saying?" Emma asked as they prepared dinner. "About the railroad coming through?" "First I've heard of it," Scarlett admitted, "but it would explain Vernon's sudden interest in consolidating land. Jacob says if the railroad comes, it'll make our farm worth twice what we paid." Emma's eyes brightened. "Maybe we could sell and move somewhere safer." Scarlett understood the impulse. "This territory's growing. Law will catch up eventually." "Is that why you stay?" Emma asked. "Because you're waiting for things to change?" The question caught Scarlett off guard. "I stay because this is my home, because people here need a doctor, even if they don't always treat me kindly." "And your friend?" Emma nodded toward the window. "Will he stay too?" "Daniel's just passing through," Scarlett said, ignoring the pang those words caused. "Fixing my barn, then moving on." Emma studied her face. "He doesn't look at you like someone who's just passing through." Before Scarlett could respond, they heard hoofbeats approaching. Daniel rode into the yard, his horse dusty from the journey. "Everything's secure at your farm," he reported to Emma. "I fed the animals and locked up the house." "Thank you," Emma said with genuine relief. "We don't have much to pay you with." Daniel waved away her concern. "No payment necessary." Later, after Emma returned to Jacob's side, Scarlett found Daniel at the water pump, washing trail dust from his face and hands. "Did you run into trouble?" she asked, noticing a tear in his shirt sleeve. "Nothing worth mentioning." Daniel shrugged. "Vernon's men were watching the place, but they kept their distance." Scarlett frowned. "Let me see your arm." "It's nothing. I'm the doctor," she interrupted firmly. "Let me be the judge of that." With a sigh, Daniel rolled up his sleeve, revealing a shallow cut along his bicep. Scarlett led him to the porch, where the light was better, and examined the wound. "Knife?" she asked, pressing gently around the edges. Daniel nodded. "One of them got closer than I'd have liked." Scarlett cleaned the cut with whiskey, her touch clinical but gentle. As she worked, she became acutely aware of the warmth of his skin beneath her fingers, the steady rise and fall of his breathing. "You shouldn't have gone alone," she said, focusing on the wound rather than the man. Vernon's men aren't known for fighting fair. Neither am I, when it comes down to it. There was something dark in Daniel's voice that made Scarlett look up. Their eyes met, and for a moment, neither spoke. This close, Scarlett could see flecks of gray in the blue of his eyes, the small scar that bisected his right eyebrow, the way his expression softened when he looked at her. "Thank you," she said finally, breaking the silence. "For helping them. Not many would risk themselves for strangers." "You do," Daniel pointed out. "Every day. That's different. I'm a doctor." "And what does that make you? Something other than human?" Daniel's voice was gentle, but his words cut through her defenses. "You risk yourself for others because it's the right thing to do. Same reason I went to check on their farm." Scarlett finished bandaging his arm, letting her hands fall away. "Most people in Timber Creek wouldn't agree with your assessment of me." "Most people in Timber Creek are fools, then." The conviction in his voice was unwavering. "I've known plenty of doctors in my time, few with half your skill, and none with your courage." Scarlett didn't know how to respond to such direct praise. It had been so long since anyone had seen past her scars to the woman beneath. She stood abruptly, needing distance from the intensity of his gaze. "You should rest," she said, gathering her supplies. "That arm needs time to heal." Daniel caught her wrist gently as she turned to go. "Scarlett." Just her name, but the way he said it like it was something precious made her heart skip. She looked back at him, suddenly afraid of what he might say next. But Daniel simply released her wrist. "Thank you for tending to me." Scarlett nodded. Relief and disappointment warring within her. "It's what I do." That night, as she lay awake listening to the sounds of the prairie, Scarlett tried to make sense of her conflicted feelings. Daniel Foster was a drifter, a man passing through her life as surely as the seasons changed. Getting attached would only lead to pain when he inevitably moved on. Yet something about him had slipped past her carefully constructed walls. His quiet strength, his refusal to be intimidated by Vernon Rayburn, the way he looked at her truly, looked at her, when everyone else averted their eyes. "Foolishness," she whispered to the darkness. But the word did nothing to quiet the hope blooming in her chest. The next few days brought more patients to Scarlett's door, all with similar stories of intimidation by Vernon's men. The pattern was clear. Vernon was isolating her, making it difficult for people to reach her cabin without crossing land he now claimed as his. "He's trying to cut off your livelihood," Daniel observed as they watched yet another patient leave, carefully taking the long route back to town to avoid Vernon's men. "Force you out when selling becomes your only option." "He underestimates how stubborn I can be," Scarlett replied, though worry creased her brow. "But I'm concerned about my patients. Some won't be able to make the journey if the direct roads are blocked." Daniel was silent for a moment, then said, "There's a town meeting tonight. Might be worth attending." Scarlett shook her head. "I stopped going to those years ago. Sheriff Rayburn makes sure my concerns are never addressed." "Things might be different this time," Daniel insisted. "With the railroad rumors, people are talking. They're worried about what Vernon's planning." "And what do you think Vernon's planning?" Scarlett asked, studying Daniel's face. "I think he's aiming to own everything between here and the county line before any official announcement about the railroad. Once that happens, land prices will soar." Scarlett considered this. "And you think people at the town meeting will stand against him?" "I think they might, if someone gives them reason to." Daniel's eyes held hers. Someone they respect. Someone who's stood her ground despite everything Vernon's thrown at her. "They don't respect me," Scarlett said flatly. "They tolerate me because they need a doctor." "You'd be surprised what people see when they look past their own fears." Daniel's voice was soft but certain. "Will you come? If not for yourself, then for your patients?" Put that way, Scarlett found she couldn't refuse. Fine, but don't expect miracles. The town meeting was held in Timber Creek's small church. As Scarlett and Daniel entered, conversations hushed, heads turned. Scarlett kept her chin high, ignoring the whispers that followed her down the aisle. They took seats near the back, where Scarlett could make a quick exit if necessary. Mayor Williams, a nervous man with perpetually ink-stained fingers, called the meeting to order. Folks, we've got several matters to discuss tonight, but I know what's on everyone's mind is this railroad business. Sheriff Rayburn stood, commanding attention with his imposing presence. My brother Vernon has been in communication with the railroad executives. Nothing's official yet, but it's looking favorable that Timber Creek might be selected as a stop on the new line. Excited murmurs filled the church. Now, the railroad needs certain accommodations, Rayburn continued. Land for the station, clear routes for the tracks. Vernon's been working to secure what's needed to make this happen. You mean he's been bullying folks off their land? A voice called from the crowd. Jacob's father, Scarlett realized with surprise. Sheriff Rayburn's eyes narrowed. My brother's making fair offers based on current market values. Fair? Another farmer stood. He offered me half what my place is worth, then had his men trample my crops when I refused. And his men shot my son for using the road we've traveled for years, Jacob's father added. More voices joined in, sharing similar stories of intimidation and violence. Scarlett watched in astonishment as the community she'd thought indifferent to injustice began to speak out. Sheriff Rayburn raised his hands for quiet. These are serious accusations. I'll look into them personally. Like you looked into the fire at Doc Scarlett's place? Turner's voice rose above the others. We all know that wasn't no accident, but the investigation sure disappeared quick. All eyes turned to where Scarlett sat. She felt Daniel's steady presence beside her, giving her strength. Do you have something to add, Miss Hawthorne? Mayor Williams asked, his voice surprisingly firm. Scarlett stood slowly, feeling the weight of the town's attention. I've treated 15 people in the past month for injuries sustained on what Vernon Rayburn is now calling his property. Roads that have been used by this community for decades are suddenly off limits. Farmers are being threatened. This isn't progress, it's tyranny. Sheriff Rayburn's face darkened. You're overstepping, Doctor. No, I'm standing exactly where I belong. Scarlett's voice grew stronger. This community needs the railroad, yes, but not at the cost of our homes, our livelihoods, our safety. If Vernon Rayburn truly has the town's interests at heart, let him work with us, not against us. Well said, Turner called, and others joined in with approval. The railroad executives aren't interested in negotiating with every farmer and homesteader, Sheriff Rayburn countered. They want to deal with one representative. Vernon has the connections, the experience, and the most to gain. Daniel interjected, standing beside Scarlett. A committee of townspeople could represent Timber Creek's interests far better than one man with his own agenda. Sheriff Rayburn's hand moved to his gun. And who might you be to suggest how we conduct our business? Daniel Foster, he replied calmly. I've seen what happens when power goes unchecked. It never ends well for the common folk. Mayor Williams, showing unexpected backbone, stepped forward. I think Mr. Foster has a point. A committee could ensure everyone's interests are considered. I propose we vote on it. Despite Sheriff Rayburn's objections, the vote proceeded. The town overwhelmingly supported the formation of a committee to negotiate with the railroad with Turner, Mayor Williams, and, to Scarlett's surprise, herself selected as members. As the meeting concluded, Scarlett found herself surrounded by townspeople not with the usual careful distance, but with genuine words of support and gratitude. It was a strange, almost disorienting experience after years of isolation. You've got more friends here than you realized, Daniel said quietly as they finally made their way outside. Apparently so, Scarlett agreed, still processing the unexpected turn of events. Though, I suspect Sheriff Rayburn and Vernon won't take this lying down. Daniel's expression grew serious. No, they won't. We should be prepared for retaliation. We? Scarlett questioned, stopping to face him in the moonlit street. I'm not leaving you to face them alone, Daniel said simply, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. The barn's almost finished, Scarlett pointed out. You don't need to stay. Daniel's eyes held hers. Maybe I want to. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Scarlett felt her carefully constructed defenses beginning to crumble. Daniel, she began, but was interrupted by Turner hurrying toward them. Scarlett, Daniel, Turner called, his expression grave. Just got word from my boy who works at the livery. Vernon's gathering his men, a lot of them. Daniel's hand moved to his gun. When? Tonight. Word is he's plenty angry about the meeting. Turner looked between them, worry etched on his face. You should both get back to your place. I'll send some men out to help keep watch. No, Scarlett said firmly. I won't have others risking themselves for me. This isn't just about you anymore, Turner insisted. It's about standing up to Vernon before he owns us all. The whole town's talking about it. Daniel nodded. Turner's right. This is bigger than just your land now. Scarlett reluctantly agreed, and they hurried back to her cabin. The night had grown cold, the stars sharp pinpricks of light in the vast Wyoming sky. As they rode, Scarlett couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change for better or worse. She couldn't say. They reached her property to find it eerily quiet. Daniel immediately began checking the perimeter while Scarlett secured the cabin, loading her shotgun and placing it near the door. No sign of them yet, Daniel reported when he returned, but that doesn't mean they're not coming. Scarlett nodded, trying to ignore the fear creeping up her spine. She'd faced Vernon's intimidation before, but never like this, never with the stakes so high. You should get some rest, Daniel suggested. I'll keep watch. I'm not that helpless, Scarlett replied, though exhaustion pulled at her. Daniel's expression softened. I never thought you were, but you've been treating patients all day, and one of us should be alert if trouble comes. Reluctantly, Scarlett agreed to rest while Daniel took the first watch. She lay on her bed fully clothed, listening to his footsteps on the porch, the occasional creak of the rocking chair as he sat vigilant. Despite her intention to remain awake, Scarlett drifted into an uneasy sleep. She dreamed of fire, of hands pulling her back as she tried to save what couldn't be saved, of voices whispering that she'd never be whole again, never be loved. She woke with a start to the sound of gunfire. Grabbing her shotgun, Scarlett rushed to the window. In the pale light of dawn, she could make out riders approaching at least a dozen, with Vernon Rayburn at the lead. Daniel stood on the porch, rifle raised. Stay inside, he called when he heard her door open. Scarlett ignored him, taking position beside him with her shotgun. My land, my fight. Daniel didn't waste time arguing. Aim for the horses if you have to shoot, less likely to kill someone. Vernon and his men pulled up about 50 yards from the cabin. Morning, Scarlett, Vernon called, his voice carrying across the distance. Heard you've been stirring up trouble in town? Seems the only trouble is the man trying to steal land that isn't his, Scarlett replied steadily. Vernon laughed. Strong words for someone outnumbered. His eyes narrowed as he studied Daniel. Your hired hand won't save you. Best he rides out now if he knows what's good for him. I know exactly what's good, Daniel replied, his rifle unwavering. And it isn't you. Vernon's face darkened. Have it your way? He turned to his men. Burn her out, just like last time. As the men prepared to charge, the sound of approaching horses came from behind the cabin. Scarlett turned to see Turner leading a group of townspeople, farmers, shopkeepers, even Mayor Williams, all armed and determined. Looks like the odds just changed, Turner called as they took up positions around Scarlett's property. Vernon's expression shifted from confidence to uncertainty. He hadn't expected the town to stand against him. "This doesn't concern any of you," Vernon shouted. "When you threaten one of our own, it concerns us all," Turner replied. "Doc Scarlett's been taking care of this town for years. Time we return the favor." Scarlett felt a lump form in her throat at Turner's words. After so long believing herself alone, the sight of her neighbors standing with her was almost overwhelming. Vernon assessed the situation, clearly realizing he was now outnumbered. "This isn't over," he snarled. "The railroad's coming, and you'll all regret crossing me when it does." "The railroad will deal with the town committee," Mayor Williams called back. "Not with you, Vernon. That was decided last night." With a curse, Vernon wheeled his horse around. "Let's go," he ordered his men. "We'll settle this another way." As they rode off, cheers erupted from the townspeople. Scarlett found herself surrounded by neighbors offering support, gratitude for her years of service, apologies for not standing with her sooner. Through it all, Daniel remained close, his presence a steady anchor in the sea of overwhelming emotion. When the crowd finally dispersed, promising to return if Vernon caused more trouble, Scarlett found herself alone with him on the porch. "Thank you," she said simply, the words inadequate for what she felt. Daniel shook his head. "I didn't do anything. This was all you, Scarlett. You stood your ground when most would have run. The town finally saw what I saw the moment I met you." "And what's that?" Scarlett asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Daniel's eyes held hers. "Strength, courage, a woman who deserves to be seen for who she truly is, not just what happened to her." Something broke open inside Scarlett, a wall she'd built long ago, brick by brick, to protect herself from hope and its inevitable disappointment. "People like me don't get happy endings, Daniel. The town may stand with me against Vernon, but that doesn't change how they see me, how everyone sees me." "How do I see you?" Daniel stepped closer. Close enough that Scarlett could feel the warmth radiating from him. "I don't know," she admitted, vulnerability raw in her voice. Daniel's hand rose slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, his fingers gently traced the edge of her scarred cheek. "I see a woman who walks through fire and comes out stronger, who heals others even when she's hurting, who stands tall when the world tries to bring her to her knees." Scarlett couldn't breathe, couldn't think past the gentle touch of his fingers on her scars, the part of herself she'd hidden for so long. "They said you'd never be loved," Daniel continued softly, his eyes never leaving hers. "But they were wrong, because I'll love you till the end of me, Scarlett Hawthorne, if you'll let me." The words hung in the air between them, a promise Scarlett had never dared to hope for. Tears welled in her eyes, spilling over onto her cheeks. "You can't mean that," she whispered, even as her heart urged her to believe. "I've never meant anything more." Daniel's voice was steady, certain. "I know we haven't known each other long, but some things a man just knows, and I know that you're the most remarkable woman I've ever met." "I'm scarred," Scarlett said, the words both a warning and a test. "So am I." Daniel took her hand and placed it over his heart. "Not all scars are visible, Scarlett. Mine are here, from the war, from the things I've seen and done. But you make me believe in healing, in second chances." Scarlett looked up at him, searching his face for any sign of pity or deception. She found only sincerity, and something else. Something that made her heart race and her breath catch. "I don't know how to do this," she admitted. "How to be loved." Daniel smiled, a gentle curve of his lips that reached his eyes. "We'll learn together." Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. He lowered his head and pressed his lips to hers. The kiss was gentle, questioning, a beginning rather than a demand. Scarlett hesitated only a moment before responding, her hand sliding up to rest against his chest. When they parted, Scarlett felt lightheaded, as if the ground beneath her feet had shifted. Everything had changed in the space of a heartbeat, and yet everything felt suddenly, perfectly right. "Stay," she whispered, the word a question and a plea. Daniel's arms encircled her, drawing her close. "For as long as you'll have me." In the weeks that followed, Timber Creek witnessed many changes. The railroad negotiations began in earnest, with Scarlett, Turner, and Mayor Williams ensuring that the town's interests were protected. Vernon Rayburn, faced with the united front of the townspeople and evidence of his intimidation tactics, found himself under investigation by the territorial authorities, with Sheriff Rayburn facing similar scrutiny for his complicity. Daniel completed the repairs on Scarlett's barn and began work on expanding her cabin to better accommodate her growing medical practice. As word spread of the town's stand against the Rayburns, more patients sought Scarlett's care, no longer fearful of repercussions. But the greatest change was in Scarlett herself. The walls she'd built around her heart gradually lowered as she allowed herself to believe in Daniel's love. Each day brought new discoveries, the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, how he read Whitman aloud in the evenings, his hand steady in hers when difficult patients arrived. On a warm summer evening, 6 months after Daniel had first arrived at her door, Scarlett sat with him on the porch, watching the sunset paint the plains in gold and crimson. "I received a letter today," Daniel said, his arm around her shoulders, "from the Army Medical Corps. They're establishing a new hospital in Cheyenne, looking for experienced doctors." Scarlett turned to him, surprise evident in her expression. "You applied for a position?" "For you," Daniel clarified. "I mentioned your skills to an old friend who's organizing the hospital. He's eager to meet you." "Cheyenne?" Scarlett considered the possibility. "That's a long way from here." "It is," Daniel agreed. "But they need skilled physicians, and you've outgrown what Timber Creek can offer, especially now that Dr. Matthews has taken over most of the general practice." It was true. The young doctor who'd arrived in spring had proven competent and eager to learn, taking on many of Scarlett's routine cases while she focused on more complex medical issues. "What about you?" Scarlett asked. "Would you want to leave?" Daniel's eyes met hers. "I want to be where you are. Cheyenne, Timber Creek. The moon doesn't much matter to me, so long as we're together." Scarlett leaned into his embrace, considering the opportunity. A hospital position would allow her to use skills she'd rarely had occasion to employ in Timber Creek, to learn from other doctors, to grow in her profession. "We could visit," she said slowly. "See if it feels right." Daniel smiled. "I already told him we'd come next month." Scarlett laughed, the sound free and unguarded in a way it never had been before Daniel. "Awfully sure of yourself, Mr. Foster." "Just sure of us," he replied, pressing a kiss to her temple. As night fell over the Wyoming plains, Scarlett reflected on the journey that had brought her here, the pain and loss, the years of isolation, the unexpected gift of Daniel's love. The scars that had once defined her were now simply part of her story, not its conclusion. "What are you thinking?" Daniel asked, his voice soft in the gathering darkness. Scarlett turned to him, her heart full. "That sometimes the stories people tell about us aren't the ones that come true. That sometimes life has better endings than we dare to hope for." Daniel's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining. "Not an ending," he corrected gently. "A beginning." And as the first stars appeared in the vast Wyoming sky, Scarlett knew he was right. This wasn't an ending, but a beginning of healing, of hope, of a love that had found her when she'd stopped believing it possible. They had faced fire and bullets, prejudice and pain, and emerged stronger together. They said she would never be loved. But Daniel Foster had proven them wrong, one day at a time, loving her scars and strength, her fierceness and vulnerability, until Scarlett could no longer doubt the truth of his words. He would love her till the end of him. And she, who had learned to stand alone, now knew the joy of standing together facing whatever came next, hand in hand, heart to heart, their love a beacon in the wild frontier. 5 years later, Scarlett stood in the garden behind their Cheyenne home, watching as Daniel taught their 3-year-old daughter, Sarah, how to plant sunflower seeds. The little girl's laughter rang out as she dropped too many seeds in one hole, her dark hair so like her father's falling across her face. "Gently, little one," Daniel instructed, his patience endless. "One seed at a time." "But I want lots of flowers," Sarah protested, her determined expression a mirror of Scarlett's own. Scarlett smiled, one hand resting on her swollen belly where their second child grew. The Army hospital had welcomed her expertise, quickly promoting her to head of surgery, a position unheard of for a woman, but one she'd earned through skill and dedication. Daniel had found his place too, teaching at the new school and writing articles for medical journals about frontier medicine. The scars on Scarlett's face had faded somewhat with time, but they remained a permanent reminder of the woman she had been and the strength she had found. Yet now, when people looked at her, they saw Dr. Scarlett Foster first, her scars merely a footnote to the story of her accomplishments. Daniel looked up, catching her gaze, his smile warming as it always did when he saw her. 5 years of marriage had only deepened the love between them, each challenge and triumph binding them more closely together. "Mama," Sarah called, noticing her watching. "Come see our flowers?" "They're not flowers yet, Sweet Pea," Scarlett explained, making her way carefully to them. "First they'll be sprouts, then stems and leaves, and finally flowers." "Like the baby," Sarah said wisely, patting Scarlett's stomach. "First small, then big, then here." Daniel laughed, rising to slip an arm around Scarlett's waist. "Clever girl. She's going to be a doctor like her mama." "Or a teacher like her papa?" Scarlett countered, leaning into his embrace. As they stood together in the garden they'd built, in the life they'd created, Scarlett remembered the words Daniel had spoken on her porch all those years ago. He had promised to love her till the end of him, and every day since had been proof of that promise kept. They had faced hardship, the loss of her first pregnancy, the fire that had nearly claimed their first Cheyenne home, the lingering prejudice against a female doctor. But they had also known joy beyond measure, Sarah's birth, the respect of their community, the deep and abiding love that sustained them through every storm. "What are you thinking?" Daniel asked, echoing a question he'd asked countless times over the years. Scarlett turned to him, her heart full. "That they were wrong, all those people who said I'd never be loved." "And you were right." Daniel's eyes, still as blue as the Wyoming sky, crinkled at the corners as he smiled. "I usually am." Scarlett laughed and swatted his arm playfully. "Insufferable man." "You're insufferable man," he corrected, pulling her closer. "Always," Scarlett agreed, standing on tiptoe to kiss him as their daughter giggled and the wind carried the promise of sunflowers yet to bloom.